Alex let out a soft sigh, his eyes narrowing as he studied the intricate blueprints spread across the large oak desk in his office. Late afternoon light streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting a golden sheen over the quiet space, filled only with the gentle scratch of pencil on paper and the low hum of the air conditioner. For Alex, an architect who had built a reputation on structures that perfectly balanced bold aesthetics with unwavering stability, order, and logic were his lifeblood. He found peace in the precise lines, the meticulous calculations, the way raw materials could be transformed into harmonious, reliable spaces. It was a world diametrically opposed to the emotional chaos and irrational expectations that often defined his own family. He loved Sarah, his wife, with a deep and quiet affection. Sarah, a social history researcher with perceptive eyes and a warm smile, was his anchor. She understood him better than anyone, able to read the unspoken tension in his furrowed brow or prolonged silences. Just last night, as he was reviewing work emails on the sofa, she had come quietly beside him, placed a warm cup of chamomile tea on the table, and gently massaged his tense shoulders. "Olivia again?" she asked simply, needing no further explanation. He nodded, not looking up from his laptop screen. The latest creative crisis," he replied, a hint of undisguised irony in his voice. Sarah merely sighed, a sound of empathy tinged with familiar weariness. She knew the weight Alex carried, the burden called family. Olivia, Alex's sister 5 years his junior, called herself a freelance artist, a vague term she used to justify long days spent scrolling through social media, half-finished art projects, and a bank account perpetually hovering near empty. With hair dyed a new color each season, and a fashion sense borrowed from Instagram influencers, Olivia embodied inconsistency. She possessed a unique talent, transforming every setback, often self-inflicted, into a sob story that only her wonderful big brother could fix. From the rent for an art studio she rarely visited to expensive online courses on personal branding she inevitably abandoned, Alex was always the one footing the bill. Their parents, Mr. and Mrs. Harrison, seemed to inhabit a parallel reality where Alex was the unshakable financial and emotional pillar, and Olivia was a delicate flower needing constant shelter. "She's just so sensitive, Alex," his mother, Eleanor, would often say, with a tone of excessive tolerance after Olivia's latest mishap. "You're the older brother. You need to be strong and look after her." His father, David, a man of few words who typically avoided conflict, would simply nod in agreement. "That's right. Family has to rely on each other," he'd state, even though that reliance almost exclusively flowed in one direction. They had, perhaps unwittingly or perhaps deliberately, cast their children in these fixed roles years ago. Alex the problem solver, Olivia the problem creator. Family gatherings usually followed a predictable script. Olivia would lament her latest career difficulties, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Eleanor would sigh worriedly, shooting meaningful glances at Alex. David would stare pensively out of the window, and Alex, after an internal struggle, would once again open his wallet or offer advice he knew would be ignored. Sarah often sat beside him, observing quietly, her hand occasionally squeezing his under the table in silent support. She never openly criticized Olivia or her in-laws, but her disapproval was clear in her eyes. "They don't respect you, Alex," she had murmured late one night after Olivia had called him frantically near midnight because she'd forgotten her credit card PIN. Another euphemism for overspending. "I know," Alex had replied curtly, his voice heavy. He knew, but he wasn't ready to confront that truth. Now, as the last rays of sunlight faded behind the city skyscrapers, Alex felt a vague sense of unease. He folded the blueprint, placed his pencil back in its holder. He had a premonition that the artificial equilibrium his family clung to was about to shatter. A storm was brewing on the horizon, and this time, he wasn't sure if he had the strength left to weather it. The sharp ring of his phone cut through his thoughts. The caller ID flashed on the screen. Olivia. Alex took a deep breath before answering. He didn't know it yet, but this call would set in motion a chain of events that would irrevocably change his life and redefine the very meaning of family. "Guess what?" Olivia's voice chirped through the phone, high-pitched and filled with the artificial excitement Alex knew all too well. He closed his eyes briefly, trying to focus on the road ahead as he drove home after a long day. "I'm getting married!" Alex managed to force out a congratulatory remark. "Oh, congratulations, Livy. Who's the lucky guy?" He had vaguely heard about someone new in Olivia's life, but given his sister's revolving door of partners, he hadn't paid much attention. His name is Marcus Thorne, Olivia gushed, her voice brimming with pride. He's a tech entrepreneur. His startup is going to change the world, seriously. He's brilliant, handsome, and absolutely adores me. Alex could almost picture Olivia twirling around her cluttered rental apartment, gesturing dramatically with her free hand. Marcus Thorne. The name sounded polished, much like Olivia's art projects, impressive on the surface, but lacking real substance. And the wedding, Olivia continued, not waiting for Alex's reaction. Oh, Alex, it's going to be the event of the year. I'm thinking of a destination wedding, maybe a luxury resort in the Caribbean, or perhaps a historic villa in Tuscany. It has to be unique, unforgettable, truly epic. She emphasized the last word as if it were the most crucial criterion. Alex felt a dull ache begin to throb behind his temples. Destination wedding, Tuscany, epic. These words translated into one thing: enormous expense. That sounds ambitious, Livy, he said carefully. Have you and Marcus discussed a budget? Oh, those minor details, Olivia giggled, a sound that made Alex cringe. Marcus is very generous, but, early-stage startup and all. Most of his assets are tied up in the company. But I know you'll help make my dream come true, won't you, Alex? You're always my hero. And just like that, the trap was set. A few weeks later, during Sunday dinner at their parents' house, the wedding dominated the conversation. Olivia excitedly showed photos of potential venues on her phone, 5-star resorts with private beaches and historic villas with sprawling vineyards. Marcus, seated beside her, looked sharp in a designer shirt, but seemed somewhat evasive in his gaze. He spoke more about strategic vision and the next funding round than about paying for his fiancée's dream wedding. Eleanor looked at the photos with feigned admiration. Oh, how beautiful, darling. But it must be terribly expensive, she said, then turned to Alex, her eyes filled with unspoken expectations. She deserves a fairy tale wedding, doesn't she, Alex? You've always been so good with numbers and organizing things. David cleared his throat. Well, Olivia is your only sister. It's her big day. We need to make sure everything is perfect. Once again, the responsibility was skillfully deflected onto Alex. No one directly asked him to pay, but the message was as clear as day. Alex was expected to handle it. A familiar feeling of powerlessness washed over Alex. He knew he should refuse, should set firm boundaries, but seeing his mother's expectant gaze, Olivia's hopeful expression, and his father's complicit silence, he found himself weakening. I'll see what I can do, he mumbled, instantly hating himself for the response. Seeing quickly turned into paying. The first payment was a non-refundable deposit for a beachfront resort in Mexico that Olivia simply had to have. The amount could cover a normal person's rent for a year. Next came the fee for the top-tier wedding planner Olivia insisted on hiring, someone who charged by the hour and constantly seemed to have new, brilliant ideas, requiring additional funds. Then came the custom-made wedding dress from a Parisian designer, the flowers imported from the Netherlands, the photographer who had supposedly shot for Vogue. The list grew longer, and Alex's bank account dwindled. With each large transfer, Alex felt a small part of his soul wither. He had worked hard to build his career, to create a stable and secure life for himself and Sarah. Now, the fruits of his labor were being siphoned away for a lavish, frivolous wedding he wasn't even sure he truly wanted to attend. The total quickly surpassed the $20,000 mark, then $25,000, creeping towards $30,000, an amount equivalent to a down payment on a small apartment. Sarah grew increasingly concerned. Alex, I really don't think this is right, she said gently one evening, finding him staring grimly at a credit card statement. This amount of money is staggering. And Olivia, I'm not sure she truly appreciates what you're doing. She also voiced her skepticism about Marcus. He seems too slick, too perfect. Does his startup genuinely have potential? Alex brushed aside her concerns, partly out of pride, partly because he didn't want to admit she might be right. It'll be fine, Sarah. It's just helping family, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Deep down, he felt trapped in a poorly scripted play directed by his own family. Olivia's demands became increasingly unreasonable. Alex, I need extra funds for the specialty cocktail experience, with a dedicated mixologist. Alex, I decided to upgrade the photography package to include drone shots. Alex, the bridesmaids need new dresses because the original color clashes with the Mexican sunlight. Every call, every text began with his name and ended with a request for money. He was no longer a brother, he was merely a talking ATM. Any initial joy, if it ever existed, about his sister getting married had completely evaporated, replaced by a growing, bitter sense of being used. He knew he needed to do something, but the thought of confronting his family paralyzed him. It was just 3 weeks before the big event in Mexico. The tension in Alex and Sarah's apartment was almost palpable. Alex had grown quieter, the lines around his eyes deepening from lack of sleep and the constant financial anxiety. He had just poured himself and Sarah a second glass of red wine on a weary Wednesday evening, trying to shake off the pressures of work and the relentless demands of the upcoming wedding, when his phone pinged softly, signaling a new email. It was from Olivia, but the body of the message was penned by the wedding planner, the glamorous and exorbitantly priced Tiffany Sterling. Subject: Important guest list update. Thorne Harrison wedding. Alex clicked it open with a familiar sense of foreboding. He skimmed past updates on airport shuttle schedules and dress codes for the welcome dinner, his eyes then landing on a short paragraph near the end. It was written in cool, professional prose, but the meaning was a direct slap in the face. Regarding final guest count confirmation for the venue, we regret to inform you that due to spatial constraints and ensuring the optimal experience for all attendees, we can only accommodate Mr. Alex Harrison. We appreciate your understanding and request confirmation of your solo attendance by end of this week. Sincerely, the planning team. Below Tiffany's digital signature was a short, breezy postscript from Olivia. So sorry, bro. Kinda awkward, but no way around it. Love ya. Alex reread the paragraph 3 times. His brain refused to process the information. Spatial constraints? At a 5-star resort where he had paid for an entire private section? Optimal experience? For whom? Certainly not for him, or for the wife he loved, the woman who had endured years of subtle mistreatment from his family. Confirmation of your solo attendance. 5 cold, brutal words. He didn't feel anger. The familiar rage that usually simmered beneath the surface whenever Olivia or his parents did something outrageous was gone. In its place was a chilling stillness, a clarity that felt ice cold. He placed the phone down on the coffee table, his hand perfectly steady. Sarah, noticing the abrupt shift in the atmosphere, looked at him questioningly. "What is it?" He said nothing, simply handed her the phone silently. She read the email, her lips tightening into a thin line. There were no tears, no dramatic sighs, just a taut silence. Her eyes, usually warm, held a steely glint Alex rarely saw. "Well," she said after a moment, her voice dangerously even. They finally said the quiet part out loud. She looked directly into Alex's eyes. "So, what are you going to do?" Alex looked back at his wife, at the woman who had always stood by him, who had quietly absorbed the hurts inflicted by his family. He thought about the money he had spent, the empty promises, the blatant disrespect. And then the decision came to him with surprising ease. He picked up the phone, opened the reply email. He typed nothing in the body. He simply changed the subject line to "Declining attendance, Alex Harrison and Sarah Harrison." Then he hit send. He turned to Sarah, a small, sad but resolute smile playing on his lips. "I'm doing exactly what they asked," he said. "I'm not bringing you." He paused, "because neither of us is going." Sarah let out a long breath, as if releasing a weight she had carried for far too long. She looked away for a second, and Alex knew she was composing herself. "I knew it would come to this," she whispered. "I just didn't think they'd actually put it in writing." "Neither did I," Alex replied. He reached out and took her hand. Her warmth spread through him, a solid reassurance amidst the storm. The last straw had finally broken. The dam of patience and familial obligation he had painstakingly maintained for years had finally burst. And in the wreckage, strangely, he felt free. The days following the decision not to attend the wedding passed in an unusual quiet. Gone were the incessant calls demanding money, the superfluous email updates about napkin colors or cocktail hour playlists. Instead, there was an almost deafening silence. Alex and Sarah savored the unexpected peace, but beneath the surface a different undercurrent was forming in Alex's mind. The initial relief of severing the toxic cord of obligation slowly gave way to a cold anger, fueled by the memory of nearly $30,000 thrown away and the blatant contempt in that final message. He couldn't just quietly withdraw. He had paid for this ridiculous play. He deserved a curtain call on his own terms. The indignation didn't erupt into shouting rage. It simmered, transforming into a different kind of energy, a calculated creative urge. As an architect, he understood the power of symbolism, of conveying messages through visuals and structure. He wanted an ending that was more than mere absence. He wanted a statement. The idea of revenge blossomed gradually. He didn't want a vulgar act of sabotage. He wanted something more sophisticated, something personally resonant, an ironic reflection of the very artificiality the wedding represented. He sat in his office late at night, surrounded by blueprints of flawless architecture, and began sketching ideas, not for a building, but for a performance. He considered his profession, an architectural model, perhaps a giant replica of the dream house Olivia always talked about wanting Alex to fund, presented ceremoniously mid-reception. But when unveiled, the interior wouldn't hold exquisite miniature furniture, but tiny 3D scenes, depicting Olivia manipulating for money, Marcus making shady phone calls, or piles of fake cash labeled loan from Alex. The idea was tempting, but intricate and potentially lost in the chaos of the party. Then he thought about the setting, the luxurious Mexican beach resort. Hiring a performance art troupe? They could blend in as resort entertainers, starting with an elegant act that slowly devolved into a surreal mimepiece, satirizing greed and deception, culminating in an unmistakable final message. Also intriguing, but perhaps too abstract, its impact overly reliant on the performer's skills. Finally, his eyes landed on the high-powered projector, his firm occasionally used for large-scale project presentations. An idea sparked. Projection mapping. A show of light and images cast directly onto a large surface, perhaps the white wall of the main resort building where the outdoor reception would take place. It was modern, visually stunning, and carried a subtle irony aimed at the tech entrepreneur Marcus. Most importantly, it would be public, impossible to ignore, a direct intervention into the perfect facade Olivia was trying to build with his money. The decision was made. Alex dove into research. He didn't approach the large event companies that might ask questions or refuse an unusual request. Instead, he searched for independent visual artists, groups specializing in guerrilla projection art, ones that might appreciate the audacity and satirical edge of the project. He found a small collective based in Austin, Texas, known for their clever and sometimes controversial installations. The communication was handled discreetly through encrypted emails and late-night video calls. Alex laid out his concept. A short projection show, perhaps 5 to 7 minutes long, beginning with classic romantic wedding imagery, roses, rings, dancing couples. Then gradually these images would distort, morph. Roses would sprout thorns, wedding rings would turn into handcuffs, dancing couples would become string-pulled puppets. Next would come stylized animated sequences, not directly depicting Olivia or Marcus, but strongly suggestive. A blonde female caricature constantly holding out her hand for money from a tall, weary silhouette. A dapper male figure with shifting eyes, holding different masks. Stylized text messages, carefully edited to avoid legal issues but conveying the gist, might flash briefly. Just need a little more. Zrania. Component placement. Don't worry, it'll all work out. The climax would be a powerful, abstract image, a giant wallet being drained by a glittering black hole, or a beautiful structure being eaten away from within by parasitic vines. The show would end with a simple, brightly illuminated line of text across the wall, "True love," or a bad investment, or perhaps the more ironic, "Congratulations," sponsored by someone else. Alex used his architectural knowledge, studying the site plans of the resort he had reluctantly paid for, to determine the optimal projector placement and the perfect angle, ensuring maximum visibility for all guests at the outdoor reception. He paid the Austin artists a significant fee in cryptocurrency through an anonymous channel, one final contribution to his sister's wedding. An investment in truth, as he saw it. He didn't keep Sarah completely in the dark. He told her he was arranging a surprise wedding gift for Olivia, something rather unique, that would be presented during the reception. He didn't delve into the specific satirical content of the projection show. Sarah looked at him, her gaze searching but also trusting. "Alex, what are you doing?" she asked, half curious, half concerned. "Just sending a message," he replied, his voice soft. A reminder about the true value. Sarah didn't press further. She knew he needed to do this his way. She just squeezed his hand. "Be careful," she said. As the wedding date approached, Alex felt a strange mixture of nervous tension and dark satisfaction. He had lost control of his family narrative for too long. Now, through a meticulously planned act of rebellion, infused with his own brand of creativity, he was taking it back. He wouldn't be there to witness it, but he knew the upcoming light show would be his final signature on this toxic chapter of his life. The days following the decision not to attend the wedding passed in an unusual quiet. Gone were the incessant calls demanding money, the superfluous email updates about napkin colors or cocktail hour playlists. Instead, there was an almost deafening silence. Alex and Sarah savored the unexpected peace, but beneath the surface, a different undercurrent was forming in Alex's mind. The initial relief of severing the toxic cord of obligation slowly gave way to a cold anger, fueled by the memory of nearly $30,000 thrown away and the blatant contempt in that final message. He couldn't just quietly withdraw. He had paid for this ridiculous play. He deserved a curtain call on his own terms. The indignation didn't erupt into shouting rage. It simmered, transforming into a different kind of energy, a calculated, creative urge. As an architect, he understood the power of symbolism, of conveying messages through visuals and structure. He wanted an ending that was more than mere absence. He wanted a statement. The idea of revenge blossomed gradually. He didn't want a vulgar act of sabotage. He wanted something more sophisticated, something personally resonant, an ironic reflection of the very artificiality the wedding represented. He sat in his office late at night, surrounded by blueprints of flawless architecture, and began sketching ideas, not for a building, but for a performance. He considered his profession an architectural model, perhaps a giant replica of the dream house Olivia always talked about wanting Alex to fund, presented ceremoniously mid-reception. But when unveiled, the interior wouldn't hold exquisite miniature furniture, but tiny 3D scenes depicting Olivia manipulating for money, Marcus making shady phone calls, or piles of fake cash labeled loan from Alex. The idea was tempting, but intricate and potentially lost in the chaos of the party. Then he thought about the setting, the luxurious Mexican beach resort. Hiring a performance art troupe? They could blend in as resort entertainers, starting with an elegant act that slowly devolved into a surreal mime piece, satirizing greed and deception, culminating in an unmistakable final message. Also intriguing, but perhaps too abstract, its impact overly reliant on the performer's skills. Finally, his eyes landed on the high-powered projector his firm occasionally used for large-scale project presentations. An idea sparked. Projection mapping. A show of light and images cast directly onto a large surface, perhaps the white wall of the main resort building where the outdoor reception would take place. It was modern, visually stunning, and carried a subtle irony aimed at the tech entrepreneur Marcus. Most importantly, it would be public, impossible to ignore, a direct intervention into the perfect facade Olivia was trying to build with his money. The decision was made. Alex dove into research. He didn't approach large event companies that might ask questions or refuse an unusual request. Instead, he searched for independent visual artists, groups specializing in guerrilla projection art, ones that might appreciate the audacity and satirical edge of the project. He found a small collective based in Austin, Texas, known for their clever and sometimes controversial installations. The communication was handled discreetly through encrypted emails and late-night video calls. Alex laid out his concept. A short projection show, perhaps 5 to 7 minutes long, beginning with classic romantic wedding imagery, roses, rings, dancing couples. Then gradually these images would distort, morph. Roses would sprout thorns, wedding rings would turn into handcuffs, dancing couples would become string-pulled puppets. Next would come stylized animated sequences, not directly depicting Olivia or Marcus, but strongly suggestive. A blonde female caricature constantly holding out her hand for money from a tall, weary silhouette. A dapper male figure with shifting eyes, holding different masks. Stylized text messages, carefully edited to avoid legal issues but conveying the gist, might flash briefly, just need a little more. Zrania Zlenadorm component placement. Don't worry, it'll all work out. The climax would be a powerful, abstract image, a giant wallet being drained by a glittering black hole, or a beautiful structure being eaten away from within by parasitic vines. The show would end with a simple, brightly illuminated line of text across the wall. True love? Or a bad investment? Or perhaps the more ironic, congratulations. Sponsored by someone else. Alex used his architectural knowledge, studying the site plans of the resort he had reluctantly paid for, to determine the optimal projector placement and the perfect angle, ensuring maximum visibility for all guests at the outdoor reception. He paid the Austin artist a significant fee in cryptocurrency through an anonymous channel. One final contribution to his sister's wedding, an investment in truth as he saw it. He didn't keep Sarah completely in the dark. He told her he was arranging a surprise wedding gift for Olivia, something rather unique that would be presented during the reception. He didn't delve into the specific satirical content of the projection show. Sarah looked at him, her gaze searching but also trusting. "Alex, what are you doing?" she asked, half curious, half concerned. "Just sending a message," he replied, his voice soft. "A reminder about true value." Sarah didn't press further. She knew he needed to do this his way. She just squeezed his hand. "Be careful," she said. As the wedding date approached, Alex felt a strange mixture of nervous tension and dark satisfaction. He had lost control of his family narrative for too long. Now, through a meticulously planned act of rebellion, infused with his own brand of creativity, he was taking it back. He wouldn't be there to witness it, but he knew the upcoming light show would be his final signature on this toxic chapter of his life. The wedding day in Mexico's Riviera Maya dawned with the cloudless azure sky and the brilliant golden sunlight characteristic of the Caribbean. The five-star resort, for which Alex had paid a small fortune, looked impeccable down to the last detail. Cobblestone paths meandered through lush tropical gardens, infinity pools glittered, merging with the turquoise ocean, and the air carried the faint scent of wildflowers and salt. It was precisely the luxurious, magazine-perfect setting Olivia had dreamed of. A magnificent stage for the grandest performance of her life. Guests, mostly Olivia's superficial friends and Marcus's seemingly important business contacts, began gathering for the late afternoon beach ceremony. They wore the requested attire of cream and linen, looking like extras in a big-budget romance film. Olivia appeared, resplendent in her expensive Parisian gown, her face radiating a well-rehearsed bliss. Marcus stood beside her, his handsome smile fixed, though a subtle tension flickered in his eyes. Alex's parents, Eleanor and David, sat in the front row, their faces beaming with a somewhat forced pride. Everything was in its place, just as scripted. Guests, mostly Olivia's superficial friends and Marcus's seemingly important business contacts, began gathering for the late afternoon beach ceremony. They wore the requested attire of cream and linen, looking like extras in a big-budget romance film. Olivia appeared, resplendent in her expensive Parisian gown, her face radiating a well-rehearsed bliss. Marcus stood beside her, his handsome smile fixed, though a subtle tension flickered in his eyes. Alex's parents, Eleanor and David, sat in the front row, their faces beaming with a somewhat forced pride. Everything was in its place, just as scripted. The ceremony was brief and unremarkable, filled mostly with generic vows and carefully staged photos against the ocean backdrop. Afterwards, guests migrated to the expansive ocean view terrace for the cocktail hour and outdoor reception as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Soft jazz music played, elaborate cocktails circulated, and the air filled with the sounds of laughter and insincere toasts in the humid air. Tiffany Sterling, the wedding planner, glided through the crowd, clipboard in hand, ensuring every minute detail was flawless. Dinner was served. Elaborate dishes Alex knew cost the earth. Speeches commenced. Olivia's father gave a saccharine speech about his baby girl. The maid of honor, a friend Olivia had known for only a few months, told a bland anecdote. Marcus thanked everyone for coming and said a few flowery words about finding true love. The atmosphere was predictably conventional, bordering on tedious. The sun had fully set, darkness descending, leaving only the glimmer of decorative string lights and candles on the tables. The large white wall of the nearby main building stood as a silent waiting canvas. Just after dessert was served, Tiffany stepped onto the small stage with her professional smile. "And now," she announced into the microphone, her voice amplified, "bride and groom and all our distinguished guests, we have a special surprise, a unique visual presentation to celebrate the love of Olivia and Marcus." The lights on the terrace dimmed slightly. A few oohs and ahs rippled through the crowd. Olivia looked at Marcus, smiling smugly, clearly assuming this was another grand romantic gesture from her wealthy fiancé, or perhaps her parents. The background music shifted to a soft, romantic melody. On the huge white wall, images began to appear. At first they were exactly what one might expect. Blooming roses, intertwined gold rings, the silhouette of a couple dancing under the moonlight. Guests murmured appreciatively. Olivia squeezed Marcus's hand, her eyes shining, but then the melody began to subtly warp from becoming slightly discordant, distorted. The roses on the wall started sprouting menacingly long thorns. The rings twisted, morphing into shapes resembling handcuffs. The dancing silhouettes became jerky, awkward, like puppets manipulated by unseen strings from above. A murmur started to ripple through the crowd. Someone chuckled, thinking it was a part of some intentional joke. Then the animated figures appeared. A blonde girl, disturbingly resembling Olivia, with wide, innocent eyes, but whose hands were constantly outstretched, greedily grabbing gold coins falling from a tall, slumped-shouldered figure whose back was turned. A dapper man, with hints of Marcus, constantly swapping masks, one grinning, one worried, one sly. Speech bubbles flashed quickly, containing phrases like, "Need it ASAP from Zrenia, component placement, Big Bro will cover it." Silence fell over the crowd, broken only by the increasingly bizarre background music. People weren't laughing anymore. Phones were out everywhere, screens glowing in the dark, recording the unbelievable spectacle. Olivia's face had gone pale, her smile frozen into a mask of horrified disbelief. She turned to Marcus, who was staring intently at the wall, his jaw clenched, face flushing with anger and confusion. Eleanor gasped, her hand flying to her chest. David looked like he wanted the earth to swallow him whole. The projection reached its climax. The image of a luxurious leather wallet being ruthlessly drained by a stylized black hole appeared, followed by a beautiful architectural structure slowly crumbling as thorny vines constricted it, sucking the life out of it. And then everything vanished, leaving only a single line of text, blazing clear and bright against the white wall. True love. Or a bad investment. The words hung there for about 5 seconds, long enough for everyone to read and comprehend. Then they blinked out. The terrace lights snapped back on, revealing the full extent of the chaos. Olivia's scream finally erupted, a piercing shriek of fury and humiliation. Marcus swore, turning sharply away from the small stage. Guests started talking loudly, some trying to make discreet exits, others gathering in small groups, pointing and whispering. The band stopped playing mid-song. Tiffany Sterling stood frozen, her face ashen, the clipboard falling from her hand with a dry clatter on the stone floor. The dream reception had devolved into a public nightmare. The perfect facade was utterly demolished. In the quiet sanctuary of their city apartment, thousands of miles from the chaos in Mexico, Alex and Sarah sat on the sofa, each nursing a glass of wine. The mood wasn't celebratory, but rather one of heavy stillness, an almost hollow calm after the storm. Alex's phone, placed face down on the coffee table, began vibrating incessantly, the screen lighting up with a barrage of missed calls and message notifications. After a while, Sarah received a text from a distant cousin, and the only relative she felt any affinity for, who had reluctantly attended the wedding. "OMG, Sarah, you won't believe what just happened. Riviera reveal is starting to trend on Twitter. Alex and... he actually did it." Sarah showed the phone to Alex. He read the message, then briefly scrolled through the first few tweets under the hashtag, shaky phone videos of the projection show, comments filled with shock and ridicule. He just shrugged, a dry smile flickering across his lips. "Message delivered, it seems," he said quietly. The next day, Alex's phone nearly melted down. By noon, he had 157 missed calls. His voicemail was full of furious messages, ranging from his mother's dramatic sobs, "How could you do that to your sister? You've ruined her!" to his father's rage-trembling voice, "You've disgraced this entire family," and even curses from relatives he barely spoke to. Texts flooded in too, full of accusations. "Cruel bastard," like Zrenia, "jealous loser," and Zrenia, "You're no son of mine anymore. A good swing. Hope you're happy destroying someone else's happiness." Alex calmly deleted them all without a second glance. In the afternoon, the doorbell rang. Not polite knocks, but angry, insistent pounds. Alex opened the door. His mother, Eleanor, stood there, her face flushed, eyes puffy from crying, or pretending to cry, wearing oversized sunglasses as if hiding from paparazzi. Behind her stood David, looking exhausted and furious. "We need to talk!" Eleanor hissed, pushing past Alex and storming into the apartment. David followed, sighing heavily. Sarah leaned against the kitchen doorway, watching silently, making no move to intervene. "What the hell did you do?" Eleanor whirled to face Alex, her voice shrill. You turned your sister's wedding into a circus. You ruined the most important day of her life. She tried to ruin my marriage first, Alex countered evenly, his voice ice cold, when she asked me to come to her wedding alone. Don't be so dramatic, Eleanor waved dismissively. It was just a misunderstanding about seating arrangements. A misunderstanding worth $30,000 and the respect due to my wife? Alex raised an eyebrow. And last night's projection was just a visual surprise, Mom. She hasn't left her room since yesterday, David interjected. She's severely traumatized. Good, Alex said flatly. Maybe some trauma will help her gain some perspective. You are a bitter, selfish boy, Eleanor screamed, losing all composure. You can't stand to see your sister happy. Happy? Alex scoffed. Is that what you call it? Or is it manipulation funded by cash? You and Dad enabled her for years, turning me into the ATM and the fixer. I paid with my money, my time, and almost my marriage. Enough is enough. His voice remained even, but filled with finality. Eleanor stared at him as if he were a stranger. You are no longer my son, she said, her voice cold. She turned on her heel and stormed out. David hesitated for a second, looking at Alex with a complicated expression. I didn't know about the message, Alex, he began. But you didn't do anything to stop it either, Alex interrupted. David nodded sadly and followed his wife. The door slammed shut. Silence. By midweek, the #1 Riviera reveal video had gone viral on TikTok, Instagram, and online gossip sites. Articles with headlines like, Bride Gets Exposed by Projector at $1 Million Wedding, or Brother's Revenge Turns Lavish Wedding into PR Disaster, were everywhere. Olivia had deleted all her social media accounts. Rumor had it Marcus had moved out of the honeymoon suite that same night and flown home alone. His startup was also beginning to face awkward questions from the media and investors. Just when it seemed the drama might be over, a new twist arrived on Friday afternoon. A plain brown envelope with no return address was slipped under Alex's apartment door. Inside, there was no letter, only a simple black USB drive. Alex and Sarah exchanged wary glances. He plugged the USB into his laptop. It contained only a single folder titled The Truth About Olivia. Inside were numerous files. Screenshots of WhatsApp conversations, bank transfer records, a few short call recordings, and email exchanges between Olivia and another man named Daniel Moreau. An older, wealthy art investor, Alex vaguely recalled Olivia mentioning once as a patron. The evidence was damning. Olivia hadn't just been manipulating Alex. She had been playing a double game for months. Daniel Moreau had been funding her art career, including the expensive studio apartment and the European trips she boasted about on social media, before deleting it. The messages revealed Olivia had promised Daniel the wedding to Marcus was merely a performance to secure a favorable prenuptial agreement and access Marcus's family funds. She planned to leave Marcus shortly after achieving her goal. One recording captured Olivia's saccharine voice reassuring Daniel, Darling, Marcus is just a means to an end. My heart belongs to you and your generous funding. Alex leaned back in his chair, a wave of disgust washing over his anger. His projection stunt, shocking as it was, now seemed almost tame compared to the intricate web of deceit Olivia had woven. Sarah stared at the screen, then looked at Alex. Should we send this to the press? She asked quietly. Alex thought for a long moment. More exposure, pushing Olivia completely over the edge. The temptation was strong, but he shook his head. No, he said. We're not making this public. He ejected the USB drive. But Marcus deserves to know the truth. He picked up the original brown envelope. We'll deliver it personally. Not for further revenge, but to give the other man the key to escape the trap he was unknowingly caught in. Finding Marcus wasn't too difficult. He was holed up in a corporate hotel near the airport, clearly avoiding everyone and trying to piece together his imploded life. Alex went alone on Sunday afternoon. Marcus answered the door looking haggard, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep and probably alcohol. He flinched upon seeing Alex, but didn't look hostile. If you came to gloat, Marcus began, his voice raspy. No, Alex interrupted, holding out the brown envelope. I came to give you this. You deserve to know the full picture. Marcus eyed the envelope, then Alex, suspicion clouding his features. He reluctantly took it, opened it, and pulled out the USB drive. What is this? Proof that I wasn't the only one she was deceiving, Alex said simply. Look at it when you're ready. Marcus stared at the USB drive in his hand, then looked up at Alex. The hostility in his eyes faded, replaced by a bitter understanding and unexpected solidarity between two men manipulated by the same woman. Thank you, Marcus whispered, almost inaudibly. Alex simply nodded and turned to leave. He didn't need to hear anything else. The final act was truly over. Back home, the first thing Alex did was cancel his old phone number and get a new one. He blocked his parents and remaining relatives on all social media platforms and left every family group chat. He and Sarah went through their contacts together, deleting names that no longer represented anything but distress. It was a simple act, but powerfully symbolic, a clean break from the toxic past. A genuine, unforced peace began to settle into their lives. No more unexpected calls demanding help, no more tense family dinners, no more guilt trips for failing to meet unreasonable expectations. They started focusing on each other, on their work. Alex found renewed joy in his architectural designs, creative projects that offered real value. Sarah immersed herself in her research, finding excitement in uncovering historical narratives. They booked flights to Lisbon, Portugal for the upcoming summer break, their first trip free from the shadow of family obligations or insincere invitations. The thought of strolling ancient cobblestone streets, enjoying wine and fresh seafood by the Atlantic, just the two of them, felt breathtakingly liberating. Today being April 12, 2025, that trip was just a few months away. Online, the number Riviera reveal story gradually faded, but Olivia became an unwilling urban legend, a cautionary tale about greed and fakery. Occasionally, Alex received private messages from old friends or distant relatives. I wish I had your courage, or you were right to walk away. They served as reminders that he wasn't alone in battling family dysfunction. A week after the meeting with Marcus, a handwritten letter arrived at Alex's office address. Olivia's erratic, emotional script was unmistakable. It wasn't quite an apology, more like a bitter confession, an admission of defeat. You were always better than me. That's why I hated you. You never wanted anything from anyone, just wanted to be left alone, and we couldn't even give you that. You won. I hope it was worth it. Alex read it once, then showed it to Sarah. She finished it and simply said, "At least she's honest about her jealousy." Alex didn't reply to the letter. He didn't tear it up either. He just folded it and put it away in a desk drawer. A reminder of the cost of not setting boundaries and the relief of finally having done so. That evening they cooked dinner together, opening a bottle of good wine they had been saving. As they clinked glasses under the soft lights of their cozy kitchen, Sarah smiled. "What are we toasting to?" she asked. Alex looked into his wife's eyes, feeling a profound sense of peace he hadn't known before. He smiled back. "To us," he said, "and to boundaries."